Hey everyone, what's good? Jubitaz back with a new video for y'all, where today we're gonna be doing another Naruto analysis. I've already had deep dive videos into different Uchiha members and their ideologies, so today I figured we'd talk about the ghost of the Uchiha, Madara, and why the narrative needed to have his ideology or plans fail. You see, the shinobi world is inherently flawed, and true peace is something that can never truly exist in a world of ninja mercenaries that are used as ninja tools by their state. I mean, that's how they made a living or earned their paycheck, and most of the major antagonists hold this view of this shinobi system being a failed one, until they are defeated by the protagonist Naruto and have to submit to his idealist ideology. However, there was one shinobi that refused to submit, the only morally grey character that couldn't be talk no jutsu'd and refused to get off of his path. That man is Madara, the self-proclaimed savior of the world. So today, we're going to take a look at Madara, briefly talk about his backstory and motivations to rationalize his way of thinking, why he refused to give up on his path, and how the narrative just could not allow for Madara to win or to be right. And now, before we begin, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and other than that, let's get straight to it. So I've already covered this topic on my channel many times before, the issues with the shinobi system. And these glaring issues are apparent and present to the audience as far back as the Land of Waves arc, when Zabuza was talking about how shinobi were just tools for the rich to use to wage their wars and die on their behalf. And the first person to truly recognize the issues with the shinobi system and its flaws was its co-founder Madara, who was a product of the Warring States era, a more chaotic era and one in which Madara lost all of his siblings. Both Madara and Hashirama were considered battle geniuses from a very young age. And before knowing the clans that they hailed from, they had a short-lived friendship where they competed with each other, honed their skills, and spoke about their hopes and aspirations. About building a settlement together where kids weren't used as cannon fodder and actually had the chance to grow up. Madara still had one brother left by then, so he initially believed in Hashirama's world, and the two of them would develop a very strong kinship. It was so strong that when Madara cut ties with Hashirama after finding out that he was from the Senju clan, he awakened his Sharingan, which is something that he didn't do even after losing 3 of his siblings. Deep down, Madara wanted to believe in Hashirama's ideals, but everything that he'd experienced in life made him very distrustful. He simply didn't believe that shinobi could show each other what was inside, what was in their gut. And that's why he never felt comfortable letting someone have his back, which was his weakness. And after losing his brother Izuna, Madara was left completely alone. This was something that remained with Madara, and he tried to keep his hope alive when his rival extended his arm, when Hashirama was willing to kill himself to show Madara what was in his heart. And that's when the Leaf Village was founded. Madara was at peace briefly, but deep down, he still couldn't get over the fact that he'd failed to protect all of his brothers, which is what drew him to the idea of the village in the first place. Madara's bitterness was dormant, but it still existed, and it rose to the surface when he peeped in on the conversation that Hashirama had with Tobirama, the more pragmatic Senju that still didn't trust the Uchiha clan and spoke poorly about them behind their backs. This is when Madara truly lost faith in the village system working and believed that this wasn't real peace, but just quiet conflict instead. A cold war, if you may. And if this way of thinking was an indication of anything, it was the resulting darkness of the village and the shinobi system. Hashirama's world didn't result in true peace, and the 3 shinobi wars that would occur were proof of that. The truth is that the idea of absolute peace and a shinobi system were simply incompatible. Since he gave up on Hashirama and his old dream of the village and the temporary or surface level peace it would result in, Madara started working on his farther dreams of the future, a very drastic measure that would deprive everyone of free will, the ultimate form of escapism, if you will. But the only way to guarantee that the conflict-loving race of shinobi conformed to peace. Let's go back to Madara's speech to Obito for a bit. Wherever there is light, there will also be darkness. As long as there is a concept of victors, the vanquished will also exist. This is the core idea behind Madara's devotion to the Infinite Tsukuyomi. A winner is only born at the cost of someone else being the loser, and Madara saw himself as that loser, the man that was overlooked for the position of Hokage because the Land of Fire's ruling class didn't want him, the man that couldn't even protect one of his brothers, the man that his own clan rejected. On top of being bitter about all of that, he believed that there will be others like him and that this was bound to create other vengeful souls. Just like how Obito had to be sacrificed under that rock so that Kakashi could be saved, or how Sasuke's clan had to be eliminated so that stability in the village could be maintained. The selfish intent of wanting to preserve peace initiates wars, and hatred is born to protect love. You could call Madara the ultimate pessimist. However, some might view his pessimism as realism, and there would be many other shinobi in the coming years that would come to the same conclusion as Madara regarding the shinobi world, like Pain for example, who believed that there was no such thing as true peace in this world. And even Pain's plans for world peace could be summarized in that he was gonna inflict so much pain onto the world that the world would gravitate towards a temporary state of peace. He knew that it would be just temporary and that humans would eventually resort back to their violent ways. However, Madara had a completely different approach to that problem. Just completely erase this world and usher in a world of dreams, where there would be no losers, where everyone would become a victor and live their ideal life. Sure, it won't be real, but it's not like those caught inside the Tsukuyomi would be made aware of that. And to achieve this plan, Madara would have to plan several years ahead. That's why he went through all that hassle. He implanted the piece of flesh that he bit off Hashirama into his body. Because of this saying, it's the two opposing sides acting together that can obtain all things in creation. Madara then waited for several years to awaken his Rinnegan, and as he remained in his cave, the outside world was still embroiled in conflict, some of which he was directly involved with, like the mist incident with Rin, but the majority of it wasn't his doing, which validated his doubts in the current shinobi system. He then manipulated Obito and got him to inherit his will and identity to enact his Eye of the Moon plan, and to ensure he remained on that path. He created the physical manifestation of his will and imbued it into a white Zetsu to keep an eye on Obito. He left his eyes with an Uzumaki child who could handle both eyes due to his overpowered genes, and then died with the intention of being brought back to life. And if we fast forward to when Madara was brought back by Kabuto during the Fourth War, he was still determined to bring an end to Hashirama's failed world and usher in a new era, despite the fact that his era had long passed, and despite the fact that this time he was the cause of this conflict. He was a man on a mission. He was too far gone to be talked out of it at this point. I mean, he came back from the grave just to activate this Infinite Tsukuyomi. That's how determined Madara was. He was completely detached from this reality, and by then, in the constant pursuit of this peace, he'd lost his identity and his humanity. He saw no value in this world that didn't feel real to him and wanted to control it, and because of how much he devalued it, he didn't hesitate to kill anyone in his way, even if it were his own child, just like Hashirama. This was the biggest difference between Madara and Obito, and why they had a different experience when they became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. When Obito became the Jinchuriki at first, and the Jubi was ripping his mind apart, that was because he was conflicted and didn't really cut off his past. That's why he put the picture of Team Minato back together and chose to remember who he was, indicating that he still had his identity. Madara, however, was completely cut off from his past and his old identity. That's how he absorbed the Ten Tails like it was nothing. He didn't have any lingering doubts about his path, and he had to lose all of his humanity in order to achieve what he believed to be the salvation of the shinobi world, to fix Hashirama's failed world, to end the long history of fighting amongst shinobi, and it was this complete and blind devotion he had for his plan that made him the perfect pawn for Black Zetsu and Kaguya. Now, Kaguya and Black Zetsu are treated like a retcon that many people just can't stand. Many fans wanted to see Madara become the final villain, hovering over the landscapes of the cocoons that are the victims of the Infinite Tsukuyomi, those that are now dreaming their ideal life. And while that is an understandable point of view, and I personally believe that Kaguya should have been foreshadowed a lot more and earlier, I think that this was really an inevitable course of action. A lot of people believe that Madara was shafted out of the story due to how overpowered he became and the author didn't know how to defeat him, so he just wrote him off. However, I believe it wasn't Madara's power that got him eliminated, but rather his ideology. That's why the Infinite Tsukuyomi was changed to be a mass chakra absorption plant, with the ideal dream world just being a part of it, because, simply put, Madara couldn't be right for the story to function. It was incompatible with the general message of Naruto, to never give up and to persevere in order to achieve one's goal, to not take the easy path but to learn how to navigate through the hard one. If Madara's Infinite Tsukuyomi was just that, then despite the violent means he went through to achieve it, and despite him robbing everyone of their free will, he would have been technically right. He would have ended all conflict. Everyone would be a winner, technically, even if it's just in their delusions. However, it's not like they would know that. Like Itachi said, people's reality is bound by their beliefs and perception, so as far as everyone's concerned, they will be living their ideal world happily. And that can't be the message that Kishimoto delivers, that the real world is so chaotic and so heinous that the only way to guarantee peace and happiness for everyone is to trap everyone inside their own delusions. Kishimoto said once in an interview before that Naruto's utopia idealism has to be written and defended on in shonen manga because shonen manga must carry hope above all. So it's not even that Madara wasn't right, but that Madara couldn't be right, because what type of message would that send? A pretty bleak and depressing one. That and basically Madara was preaching escapism and robbing everyone of their free will. Though like in the real world, those that have seen the ugliest side of the world are more prone to discarding reality and living with delusions instead. And someone even said that in order to live happily, you need to have a certain degree of delusion. And this is what gave Kishimoto the perfect excuse to use Zetsu in order to introduce Kaguya, since Zetsu was foreshadowed from long ago to have a greater role than was depicted at first. Remember, he's the first Akatsuki member we see after Itachi and Kisame. It's only Kaguya that felt like she came out of nowhere. And while I wasn't a big fan of her introduction at first, it eventually grew on me, and I understand it from a narrative point of view. But anyways, this has been my analysis of Madara Uchiha, the man with a dream. A dream to put everyone else in a dream in order to sever the karmic cycle of this world, to free all of mankind of all of their suffering and futility by completely discarding their reality, and having everyone live in a delusion world where they were all happy and free of pain. And the narrative just couldn't have Madara be correct because of the implication of that, so the Infinite Tsukuyomi was instead a mass white Zetsu production plant, which despite all the criticism doesn't make sense from a narrative point of view. And you'll still see people to this day say, oh, Madara may have been right all along, showing how much of an impact Madara Uchiha had as a villain on the story and on the anime community as a whole, or to be more exact, a broken hero. And that's it for today, you guys. Now, if you like this analysis and want to see more Naruto analysis videos, then may I suggest my character dissection playlist, and other than that, I'll see you next time. Peace.